Hey guys, so happy 4th of July. Today's the 4th of July, and thanks for watching my journal. And I wanted to step up my game with my videos a little bit because I feel even I'm bored with them, and they are like a journal and I talk randomly. So today I'm going to focus on a frame up custom build considerations, and then wait till the end, and I'm going to leave you with a teaser, I guess, because I'm not going to give you all the details. So when you build a frame up, you really have to take inventory of the parts and take into some considerations. First, you need to pick the right frame for you, the size and the geo for you. And that's going to determine some of the other considerations when you build up that frame. Specifically, when you do a frame and you have a geo that's more of the modern geo on a hardtail, you might use a smaller stem as compared to the older stems. And then you also have to consider what fork you're going to use with it, because most of the hardtail frames come with a range that they suggest you get an axle to crown fork at this range, because that's how they did the geo numbers on that axle to crown. And I'm going to go over there and show you some of this stuff, and then I'm going to show you some parts. So this is your axle to crown. So the axle is obviously the axle of your hub, and the crown is the crown of your fork. So this is the measurement you want to consider when getting the right length fork for your hardtail frame. And there's other details that you must consider before you buy it. Let's start right here, the headset. This is a zero stack E44, and then it's external cup 44. So ZS44, EC44. So you want to make sure you get the right headset. Stem. Most stems of the full suspension bikes and many hardtails are 35 now, but this is a 31/8. So if you get a 31/8 stem, you have to make sure you have the 31/8 handlebars. And then you also want to consider how much rise do you want. Now when your bike is on the ground and they give you these numbers, that's your stack height. So if you have a real high stack height, you might get away with a lower bar. You don't need to get a riser bar. But if you have a real high stack height, which this one does, I wanted a lower riser bar. But the bars have a little bit of rise, as you can tell. They're just not that much. Other things with your seat post clamp and the type of dropper post. Your dropper post can only insert so much because of the water bottle cage mounts, and so you have to have a dropper post that's going to insert enough and be able to extend up. So you can't get an oversized dropper post, for me especially, because I'm short, for a small frame. If you're a larger frame, you have a little more options, but a smaller frame, you pretty much have to have a dropper that's like 150, maybe even 125 or 120. So that's not that big of an issue for me. I don't need it slammed all the way down because I'm not raising it all the way up. I get my frames fit me well. I'm in between kind of a small and a medium, and I always size down. The cranks, something to consider when you get the cranks. What type of bottom bracket? So when you're getting the cranks, is the bottom bracket 6873 threaded, and what type of spindle are you using? Is this a 30 millimeter spindle or a 24? Now most spindles are 30, except for the SRAM, which are a dub that's like 29 on one side, 30 on the other, and then the Shimano are all 24. So you need to know what type spindle, because that has to match your bottom bracket, and you need to know if it's a threaded BSA 68 threaded bottom bracket that you'll thread it into your frame. I get only threaded frames, so I'm pretty standard with that. The wheels, obviously the wheels, you're going to fit your wheels to your bike, and your wheels are only going to have so much clearance. As you can see, I only have so much clearance there, and so you're going to have to get the wheels that are going to clear your hardtail frame. If you have more of an XC hardtail frame, it may not have the bigger clearance for 2.5 tires. It may only have clearance for 2.4. So you want to consider that when you're building it up. So let's take a look at some of the parts that I've assembled and disassembled from many of my builds, and what I'm considering when I'm building up a new frame. So one of my first considerations, obviously, after the frame is my fork. So my next build is going to be with a rigid fork. So I already have the takeoff from my, well, not a takeoff, but when I took apart my last frame that I warranted, I took off these forks. And something to consider with my fork, this fork has been cut. So if I get a fork that's been cut or go to a frame, I need to know how long is my head tube. Not only how long is my head tube, but I also need to know what is the stack height and how many millimeters is my stem. So if I get a stem that has this is the stem that I was using before, it's pretty short. I think it's 30 millimeters. But if I get some of the bigger ones are like 45, that's going to take away from how much the fork has the insertion. So I need to make sure I'm considering that. I also like to consider what type of handlebar. Now all my handlebars I always get 780. I've just been stuck on 780 and kept it there. So these are both 780s, but you could trim them down if you want to trim them down to a different size. But I have landed on 780, and I've landed on 50 millimeter stems for most of my bikes. If I was going to get a different style bike, maybe an all mountain bike or a long travel trail bike, I might consider a 35 or a 40 or something like that. But for me, for my hardtails, my 50s work out. Now with my cranks, you have to not only consider the chainring size, because your chainring needs to be consistent with your cassette, because you don't want to have a chainring that's really big and then have a cassette that's limited to 46. Mine are all limited to 46, but you might be getting a chainring that is not limited to 46. It might go 1050 or 1052. I think some of them go up to. So you might get away with having a bigger chainring like a 34. This is a 32. I've kind of landed on 30 or 32 and stuck there. But in the beginning, when I was younger and stronger, I was using 34s. But lately I've just been using 30 and 32s. When the brakes, now I've moved up to 180. In the beginning, I used to always use 160. This bike obviously has 180. And I'm gonna stay with 180. I like the way the brakes feel better on 180. But when you're using 180 on some types of brakes, you have to put a mount to extend it. They're not native 180. So this is a native ISO mount. So that means I have to clamp this to an adapter and then clamp my brakes. So it just has a smaller adapter if it was an ISO mount for the 160, but I put a little bit of an extension, and that's why I have this demonstrated here. I ordered the wrong size, and then that was for a 200. So you need to make sure you figure out which size you want to order if you're going to do an ISO mount. Same with your post mount. Your forks are always post mount. So if you're getting a post mount, it's pretty straightforward. Your post mount, there's a little bit longer on one end and then shorter on the other end, but you need to get your post mount that is correct for your fork and for the rotor that you're going to use. So these are 180 rotors. That post mount worked out fine. You will need to have some longer bolts. This I went with better bolts, and that worked out perfectly for me. But you need to make sure you have that matched up and have the right extension, unless your fork comes native. Now this fork comes native with it actually has a little more complicated because it's got the flip chip in there, but it comes native with a post mount to 160. So I'm going to get an extension to do it to a 180. The other things to consider are your little little things like types of pedals you're going to put, type of saddle those are very personal, but you should consider that pretty intensely, because you want to consider the fact that you want your saddle measured up to you. And that's kind of what got me started on this. So I've never measured a saddle, and then I have SQ Lab bars, but I've never had an SQ Lab saddle. And so they come up with this measuring guide. You sit on there, it imprints your sit bones, and then you measure it, and then that gives you the proper saddle that you size of saddle. So I'm going to go and I'm going to order a saddle today. That's why I have this out here, but I wanted to show you everything that I consider. The other things I like to consider that are really important to me is I like to have my brakes integrated with my dropper post. And so if I'm going to get brakes, get a dropper post, I'm going to make sure I get the integration to my brakes and to my shift. Same with my shifters. I don't like to have separate clamps. I should have shown you that on another bike. So the Wolf Tooth does a great job of integrating. They actually have this little integration and adjustment, so you can adjust it, slide it back and forth, and you can integrate it. So I really like that integration, the way they did it. So it's all contained in one clamp. I don't like to have a bunch of clamps. Now this is, my friend built this bike for me, and I honestly haven't built a complete bike from scratch. I'm going to, but I haven't done it yet. And he found a way to get this old style shifter from the older XTs to attach to the newer XT brakes, which is pretty clean. And that was by Problem Solvers. He found an adapter to use that. So there's lots of little companies out there that make adapters. So don't give up hope to get your integration. If you look around, you can find something. And I think that covers pretty much everything. So I've got some parts here ready to go for my next build. King Creek, I love these guys. They gave me this, they warranted this headset. This is a brand new headset that they warranted for me. Hope, you can't get a warranty on bottom brackets unless you get the real expensive King Creek $300 and something bottom bracket. So I just get the $100 something ones and then just replace them all the time. Tires, I've got tires galore. I buy tires when they're on sale, so I always have extra tires. I've been really loving the Kenda. That's what I have on my 275 Plus, and those are some more Kenda. As you guys know, I like the Terravel too. The Teravels go on sale a lot because it's owned by a very big company that makes